The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan Yorke. We are in the midst of the Republican National Convention, virtual as it is and strange as the whole two-week process has been. We often talk to folks who have issues with Donald Trump and arguments with him. It is always important for us to keep this conversation balanced. And tonight we talked to the state GOP chairperson, Cienki, about her thoughts on the convention itself, and perhaps more importantly for her agenda, the issues that Republican candidates for office, both state representative and state senate, have, and what you might be hearing door to door, mask wearing included, right? The Democratic nominating speech on calamari got a lot of attention. Embarrassing as it was for most. I guess some restaurants are doing well with it, but the Republicans didn't want to eliminate calamari from consideration. But here's Leanne Senek, the committeewoman for the state Republican Party, and her nominating speech for Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, the ocean state where we like to make waves, as evidenced just yesterday by the hundreds of boats that cruised Narragansett Bay to rally for President Donald Trump. We have a long history of being rebels, from our founding on the basis of religious freedom to the independent man standing atop our state house. As the minority party in the smallest state, we carry on the tradition by standing up to the tyranny of 8 decades of one-party rule. We put forth common sense policies to help everyday Rhode Islanders who love coffee, milk, and doughboys, dip their clam cakes in chowder, celebrate the nation's oldest 4th of July parade, cherish our memories of Rocky Point, light the water on fire, and yes, we eat a lot of calamari Rhode Island style. We believe in promises made and promises kept, and we know that the best is yet to come. So the biggest little delegation of the state of Rhode Island proudly stands united to cast our 19 votes for President Donald J. Trump.
And so that is the presentation from Rhode Island in the nominating process for Donald Trump. Less prime time than the Democrats, but perhaps a little bit more, I don't know, balanced, maybe perhaps less goofy, more inclusive of the assets of Rhode Island, not incredibly more serious, but what are you going to do? Cienki is the chairperson of the state Republican Party and has been kind enough to join us. Sue, welcome and thanks very much. And how are things in COVID season for the GOP?
Well, it's unusual. I think we've had to learn how to be flexible and adaptable and change the way we campaign amid COVID. But we're plugging along. Our candidates are really trying to get out there and being respectful when they're door knocking and trying to get their message out.
Yeah, folks, we recorded this program Wednesday afternoon. You're seeing this on Thursday night. Donald Trump obviously scheduled to speak Thursday night, and at least his big speech Thursday night. But we've had at least enjoyed a little bit of flavor of the Republican National Convention. Let me not ask a leading question. How have you digested this yourself?
Well, I think that the Republicans came out with a very positive message. You know, look at what Donald Trump has done for the country in 3 years when he took office. He has started to drain the swamp. The economy was doing well prior to COVID. So it was a very positive message. They brought people into the convention to talk about their individual stories. So they didn't use Hollywood elite. They didn't use to give everybody a depressing message. It was a very positive, uplifting, enthusiastic message for the Republicans.
Okay. So referring to Joe Biden as a Loch Ness Monster, I guess is an upbeat deal. Last night, meaning Tuesday night, the former Attorney General of Florida lays one on Joe Biden and more or less calls Hunter Biden a corrupt oligarch out of Ukraine. All those things count in the positive, uplifting message that you're speaking about?
Well, I think that what you have to look at is, politicians are going to talk like politicians are. So when the politicians talk, of course, they're going to be very aggressive. But when you had the real people talking, like Maximilian Alvarez, when he talked about how he came to the country as a Cuban refugee, those were very inspiring messages. So I want people to look at what the real everyday people are talking about and how it has impacted their lives. Those were very powerful. And I think those are the ones that most people would connect on. I think most people understand how politicians talk, and you're always trying to persuade people to your side. So they get a little bit more aggressive and maybe a little bit, tougher in their talk. But the real people that came and talked, they were very inspiring. I think they did an absolute terrific job.
So do you find it a challenge as a Rhode Island Republican chairperson, versus the mainstream, I should say, middle America Republican dynamic, which is wholly more acerbic right now? It is smash mouth. There's the divide of this country is something we've talked about before. It's clear. I've never sensed historically that the Rhode Island GOP was necessarily in lockstep with all the conservatism that formerly marked what the Republicans were, and you've always kind of had a different half step. Do you feel like you're in lockstep with the tone?
There's no getting around that. It's a deep blue state, and my job as Rhode Island GOP chair is really to be concerned about what happens up at the State House. What has happened at 80 years of Democratic control? And that's what I'm concerned about. The National Party is going to do what the National Party does. I'm a big fiscal conservative, so I always worry about the national debt. So that's one area that we're not going to agree with on the National Party. But President Trump is the nominee, and he's going to try to win the case. Is he going to win Rhode Island? Well, the last Republican president that won the 4 electoral votes was 1984, and that was Ronald Reagan. Is there some enthusiasm? Certainly. We saw on Sunday the Trump vote rally. There were 1,000 votes, and there were thousands of people lining the sides of the bay. So there is some great enthusiasm for the president here. Is it enough to overcome a deep blue state? I'm not sure. But then again, who knows? Look what happened in 2016.
So do you feel like you support Donald Trump as for the presidency, or tolerate his nomination?
Well, I think that people look at Donald Trump as he's bold, brash, and unapologetic, and that's absolutely the way that he operates. But then you look at the Democratic Party and you see Joe Biden. Quite frankly, I think he's incompetent. He has been there for a number of years down in Washington, and what has he really accomplished other than filling his wallet with a lot of money and his family with a lot of money? So Donald Trump is not your typical politician. Do I wish that he would tweet less? Absolutely. Would I like to be his communications person and tell him to tone down some of his rhetoric? Absolutely. But he's very different, and that's who the Republican nominee is.
So you don't evaluate Joe Biden for 8 years of the Obama administration? The idea that he's done nothing but make money for his family over a 47-year political and public career is
certainly. And I'm sorry.
I know it's the line from the convention, but do you really believe that? You give him no marks for any successes in his 8 years as vice president?
When the Democrats started this race, there were quite a few Democratic candidates that impressed me, that I thought, well, gee, the Democratic Party is really going to try to put up a fight against Donald Trump. But they all went to the wayside, and they picked someone that has been in the swamp for over 47 years. He's had 47 years to make effective change. Did he? Did they help the Black community? No. Look at what President Trump did. The First Step Act. He has historically low unemployment prior to COVID for the Black, the Hispanic, for women. So he's done a really good job. In 3 years, what has Joe Biden done in 47?
Talk to me about the management of COVID. You think Donald Trump has been on his game?
So quite frankly, I think that this was a novel virus that came in and nobody knew exactly what was going to happen. You know, one of the good things that I think he did was he shut down the border to China. When Joe Biden, when Nancy Pelosi, when Chuck Schumer were saying, we don't need to close down the border. We don't need to do this. We can have a China parade in San Francisco. Stop worrying about this. Are there things that could have been done better? Absolutely. There were things that could have been done better. But again, it's also a virus that we really didn't know. And quite frankly, you know, the virus is attacking your most vulnerable population, your elderly. So that's really where we should have concentrated our efforts on, to make sure that anybody going in and out of a long-term care facility or a nursing home, they should have been tested. They should have tested the patients there. They probably should not have allowed any COVID patients back into the nursing home. I mean, you look at what the governor has done here and set up those field hospitals, which were a good idea. They could have taken those nursing home patients and put them into those field hospitals and segregated them from the general population. And I don't think we would have seen as many deaths. But it's always great to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I think we could have done things better. But look at the speed in which we're producing a vaccine. It's unprecedented. Look what they did for Honeywell here. We took the facility in Smithfield and we're producing N95 masks. So the PPEs are getting out there. The virus we've seemed to flatten the curve. So I think things are going pretty well.
All right. Well, we'll see what the progress is in the vaccine once the vaccine is validated. It gives me a very political, queasy feeling to hear about the progress of the vaccine in a run-up to November, only to find out after the election that we're going to have to wait a while. Unprecedented speed in a vaccine is not something that ought to give anybody a lot of confidence. Doesn't seem. But I guess we'll deal with that when we go. Well, listen, we could go round and round on the Trump administration and on this national election, but when we come back. Sue has always been really kind of focused on what's going on here in Rhode Island. We'll talk about the cast of candidates for election in this cycle in 2020, and perhaps a reflection on that thing called the General Assembly, which really ought to be on a milk carton somewhere. We'll be right back with Sue Cienki, the chairperson of the Republican Party. Stay with us. Welcome back to My State of Mind. Dan Yorke here with Sue Cienki, the Republican Party chairperson. Convention and national election aside, what's the flavor here in 2020 with COVID and with the presidential acrimony on both sides? It's always a difficult task to get attention for local elections. This year it's got to be even more brutal.
You know, it's been very interesting that people notice that the General Assembly has been vacant from the State House since about March. We still don't have a budget that's passed. We have this IGT deal that is outrageous, a $1 billion no-bid contract that the Republicans have been pushing for. And I think as our candidates go around and they meet voters in their districts, they're hearing a lot of frustration. They're hearing, why aren't they meeting? What's going on? And particularly now that the towns really don't have the money that they've been promised from the State House. There's a lot of frustration at the town level. So I think hopefully that will benefit our candidates if they go in there and they talk about solutions.
I think you misspoke. The Democrats are pushing for the IGT contract, not the Republicans. In fact,
I meant it's a bad deal, right? Sorry.
Sure, the Republicans have been arguing about it, and Minority Leader Blake Filippi and others have been asking, a bunch of questions that ought to be asked. I followed that case pretty closely. Twin Rivers' objections, of course, were washed away by a merger with IGT. So now we have an even bigger entity, and the diligence on that and so many other things goes by the wayside when we've got an emergency situation. What's your take on the status of the governor's extended emergency autonomy here? I've never seen anything like it. The decisions that she is making left and right without any kind of General Assembly input are to me, flabbergasting.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's easy to be, again, a Monday morning quarterback. When the virus took hold, yes, she needed to show some leadership. And I think that she did. I'm not going to beat her up on that. But 30 days. And then she keeps extending it 30 days and 30 days and 30 days. We got $1.28 billion from the federal government. And that money is not flowing into small businesses, into people that actually need it. It needs to have some oversight from the General Assembly. And there is no oversight. They're failing down and not doing their job. And that's, the citizens of Rhode Island should be up in arms about that. Why aren't you watching what she's doing? And not to say everything that she's done is wrong, but there has to be some level of oversight. That's why they were elected.
Well, when you say that people recognize this, I want to talk to you about the door knocking process, which of course is affected by the mask wearing and everything else. But are you reflecting on what you're hearing in media? I mean, that speech you just made is very reflective of many of my monologues on the radio and the television the last few months. So, I mean, you got no quarrel with me. But are you getting a general sense? Give me some anecdotal evidence that people on their own raise the issue of a dormant or sleepy General Assembly, or General Assembly that's just given way to the government.
So as our candidates are door knocking, you know, all of them are wearing masks, they're leaving their literature by the door and they're stepping back. And the citizens that they're engaging with, they said, oh, it's so nice to see you. And number one of the biggest issues is defunding the police. They said, do you believe in defunding the police? That's the number one issue. And B, where is the General Assembly and how is this going to affect my taxes? So that has been a recurring theme over and over again. Why aren't they there? What's going on? Why aren't they watching what the governor is doing? What's going to happen with my kids? Are they going back to school? Are sports going to be played? Those are the issues that keep coming up over and over and over again.
Is there a GOP position or talking point for your candidates on this defunding the police question?
Yeah, so people want to know, are you in favor of defunding the police? And certainly any organization can always be done better. You know, there's always a way. But if you look at the police department, it's one of the organizations that anytime that there's a shooting, there's always an investigation. There has to be statistics. And you can look at those statistics to see who gets shot, who gets hurt, what has happened to the police. The police officers are out there putting their lives on the line. It is a very tough job. So that's what most of our candidates, I would say all of our candidates are saying, we are backing the blue.
Yeah, I think I think this defunding thing is a protest march cliche. It is hardly something that maybe the Portland, Oregon City Council passed that. I think most folks have calmed down on the concept of defunding the police. When we come back, we'll talk specifically about the challenge of being a Republican candidate historically and here, and what projection the GOP chairperson might have for impact on the General Assembly in this 2020 election. Right back with Sue Cienki. Stay with us, please. My state of mind, Sue Cienki is the chairperson of the state Republican Party. Historically, it's been very difficult to make any hay. Do you have any projections as to what might be some numbers growth in the General Assembly this year?
Sure. I mean, we're starting out at the lowest level that we've ever been. We have 9 members in the General Assembly and 5 in the Senate. There are a couple open seats that we're very hopeful on the Senate side that we can pick up a couple of seats. And certainly on the representative side, we think that we can pick up a number of seats. We have about 33 candidates on the rep side, and there are 18 candidates that are running on the Senate side. So we're hoping to pick up a couple of those. I know we're not going to win them all, but we're hopeful that we're going to grow our ranks. It's a start. You know, when I came in and took over as GOP chair, I said, we have to put together a long-range plan, 12 years to start turning the state more purple and then totally red. It's not going to happen in this cycle. You know, we specifically did not put candidates up, 113 candidates, because I said our money and our resources cannot be extended that far. So we are targeting specific races that we believe that we can win.
How do you feel about the speaker's race? I mean, do you think that the wife of Mayor Fung, Barbara Fenton, is going to be able to make a race of this? And what leads you to that thought, if so?
Well, I think it's going to be a competitive race. If you look at the data, Mayor Fung is actually very well liked in that district. So she's going to have name recognition. She's going to have that in her back pocket. But it's always difficult to take on the Speaker of the House. Certainly the people that live in District 15, they kind of like having the leader of the Rhode Island government living in their district because they get things from it. They get money, they get grants. So it's hard to remove that, but I hope people understand how much of a cloud of corruption he's under and say, is this really what we want? Do we want to be known for this? So I think she has a fighting chance. She's out there working hard every day. Her and the mayor are actually campaigning together. So I think when people get to meet her and understand what she is trying to accomplish, she has a good shot at it.
All right, we'll have plenty of time to talk before the November election, but while we've got 30 seconds here, what is the Republican theme here in Rhode Island? In sync with, or perhaps alongside or differentiated from the national Republican message?
Well, I think that people in Rhode Island have to realize that we've had 80 years of Democratic control. And right now we have students up in Providence, 8th grade boys up in the Providence school system, only 6% of them can read at grade level. So we're huge proponents of school choice. We're huge proponents of government transparency, particularly when it comes to the budget. We're going to have close to $1 billion hole by the time this is all over. So we want more business-minded people that get elected, and that's what we're fighting for.
All right, well, good update. We'll touch base with you not only after the convention, but as the election season heats up. It's going to be a weird fall, Sue. It's going to be a weird fall. So many ways. School in, school out, election messes, mail ballots, blah, blah, blah. So there'll be plenty to chew on, no doubt about it. Thank you.
Certainly.
Appreciate
Thanks.
you. Sue Cienki, the GOP chairman. Final word and we come back. Please stay with us. Long been a struggle for the state Republican Party to get traction, and this year will be as difficult, if not worse. This notion that you are aware that the General Assembly has more or less gone to sleep is interesting to me. It has, whether you've been subordinate to all of this and the governor's autonomous reign is, I guess, to be determined this fall. We'll talk more about it, of course, tomorrow, 3 to 6 on WPRO. And back here tomorrow night on My State of Mind. Thanks so much for tuning in. Good night.